Okay guys, what we are going to talk about today and continue to practice with for the next few days are ordered pairs. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to start looking at graphing. Alright, I know not everybody really likes graphs, but this is an important part of math and algebra. So, for our ordered pairs, the first thing is an ordered pair is going to be a parentheses and then a number, comma, followed by another number and then their parentheses. Okay, now your first coordinate is always going to be your x value. Okay, and then your second coordinate is always going to be a y value. It is always x, y, and the best way to remember this is in the alphabet, x comes before y, so x and then y. Alright, now a couple of things when you're graphing. The x-axis, okay, this is the horizontal axis, okay, horizontal axis, and what that means is it goes from left to right. Okay, the x-axis goes from left to right. Okay, your y-axis is your vertical axis, and it goes up and down. Okay, so vertical y-axis means like this. Okay, so when you are looking at ordered pairs, the first thing is your x value is first. The x value can be found along the x-axis. Your y value will be second, and it can be found along your y-axis up and down. Okay, so I've got some pre-printed problems here. I wanted to look at just a couple of these. We're going to practice picking out some points, and then we're also going to practice graphing our own ones. Okay, so for you virtual kids, I don't really know how easy this is going to be without printing this off. But y'all just follow along, okay? So I'm going to pick just a handful of points here. One thing that you'll notice is that sometimes on your graph you will only have positive numbers, okay? That would be this quadrant right here. If that's the case, all of your numbers are just positive. Okay, so let me take an example. Let's say I go with point J, and I want to find the coordinates, or the ordered pair. This is the coordinates for J. So what I do is I find that point, and first I go along the x-axis, which is this direction, left and right, and I find where J lines up with on the x-axis. Boom, it lines up right here at 5. So that means the x value here is 5. So I'm going to start at 5. I know that's my x value. Then I go on the y-axis, which is up and down, and I find where J lines up on the y-axis, and that is also at 5. So that means J's coordinates are at 5, 5. Okay, let's do another one on this graph. Let's look at T. Okay, so the first thing is locate T. Here we are. Okay, first you go along the x-axis. Boom, T lines up with 8, so that means the x value is 8. And then you find where it lines up along the y-axis, right there. That would be at 2. So that means my y value is 2. Let's do another one. How about Q here? Q, if you can't tell, is right there on the y-axis. So let's look at Q. So first of all, you do x first, and then you do y. Now, Q is right here on the x-axis. This number right here is 0. And then on the y-axis, it's at 6. So my x-coordinate is 0 and my y-coordinate is 6. Okay, let's do one more. How about F? So F, first thing I do, F lines up with my x-axis on number 3, so my x value is 3. And then on the y-axis, x lines up with 1, so my coordinate is 3, 1. Actually, let's do one more because I didn't notice this one right here, R. So R is similar to Q. Q was on the y-axis, R is sitting on the x-axis. So I'm going to do my x first on my x-axis right here, it is sitting on number 5. So my x value is 5. But it doesn't go up any on my y-axis. It stays right here, which right there is 0. So my x value is 5, but my y value is 0. Okay, these next couple of graphs, this is where it gets tricky. We don't just have positive numbers, we also have our negative numbers. Okay, but this right here, this is my x-axis, left and right, and then this axis is my y-axis, up and down. Okay, so again, x is first and then y. So let's say we want to figure out the coordinates for point A here. So go to A. First you follow your x-axis until you line up with A, boom, right there. That x value is number 3. So my first coordinate is 3. Then see where it lines up on your y-axis, boom, right there, which is a y value of 2. So this coordinate is at 3, 2. How about B? Now B is where it starts to get tough because now we're down here in this negative area. Again, x first. So take your x-axis, go along your x-axis until you line up with B, and that would be right here. So right here, my x value is negative 1, 2, 3. So my x value is negative 3. And then what is my y value? Well, that's when you go along here. Boom, right there. My y value is also negative 3. So this one's coordinates are negative 3, negative 3. Okay, it really just takes some practice. Let's look at C on this graph. So C, again, follow your x-axis first. That would be down here. Until you line up with C, which will be here. And that is a negative 4. So that means for C, my x value is negative 4. And then you go along your y-axis, and that would be here where it lines up with my y-axis, which if you go across, there's positive 4. So my coordinates are negative 4 on the x-axis, positive 4 on the y-axis. Okay, let's do point D. So go to your x-axis first until you line up with D, and that would be here. So my x value is positive 4. And then you go on your y-axis, and here's where it lines up on my y-axis, which is at negative 4. So D has a coordinate of 4, positive 4, negative 4. Okay, let's just do a couple of more examples here. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds here. I'm going to list out some points, okay? And I want you to write out the coordinates for each point. I'm just going to pick 4 or 5 of them, okay? So let's go with, give me the coordinates for C, for point E, point D, F, and H. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes here. Give me the coordinate pairs for C, E, D, F, and H. Alright, so if you didn't pause your video, pause it and do that real quick. But I'm going to go ahead and go over these. So point C, here's point C. First thing you do is you go on your x-axis, that would be here. Point C lines up with 3. So my x value is 3. And then you go on your y-axis, and it lines up with positive 9. So this one's coordinates are 3, 9. Okay, point E, here's point E. On your x-axis first, it lines up with 7. And then on your y-axis, it lines up with negative 1. Alright, how are we doing? Okay, point D. Go to your x-axis first, that would be horizontally. D lines up right here, right there, at negative 3. So my x value is negative 3. And then on the y-axis, it lines up with negative 5. For F, go to your x-axis first, boom, it lines up with negative 10. And then on my y-axis, that would be this direction, up and down. it lines up with -3. Okay, and then the last one I gave you guys to do was h. So h is right here. Go to your x-axis first, that would be -4. And then on your y-axis right here, +6. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to actually try to graph our own. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of points. I'm going to give you some letters and I'm going to give you some points, and I want you to put a point where I give you, and also we're going to label it. We'll do one together. I'm going to use some letters that are not on here. So let's just do an M. And I want us to graph the point. Let's do -9, 2. So when you're graphing this, just know you've got x, y. So you go to your x-axis first, and you find -9, that would be right here. And then because y is at +2, I'm going to go up to +2 on the y-axis. Right here would be point M. Okay, let's do another one. Let's call this one point P. And let's do it at +1, +6. So, first of all, this is my x, this is my y. So if I go to 1 on my x-axis, and then I go up to 6 on my y-axis, 1, 6, here's where those two line up, so that would be point P. Okay, so let me give you just a couple of more points here, and again, I'm going to have you pause the video and try this yourself. If you're not doing it on paper, at least you can visualize it. But let's see, let's do a point x at -5, -3. Let's do a point y at +3, -10. And let's do z at, how about -6, 8. Okay, so pause the video for a second and try to do x, y, and z by yourself. Okay, for x, here we go. I'm going to go over this. For x, first thing we're going to do, my x value is -5, and my y value is -3. So on the x-axis first, I go to -5, and then I go down to -3. That would be right here, and that would be point x. For y, 3, -10. So on your x-axis, you go to 3, and then you go down to -10. Boom, right there, that would be point y. And then the last one we're going to do is z. So you start on your x-axis at -6, and then you go to the +8, which will be up here, right there. So -6, +8, that would be point z. Okay, so this really just takes some practice, and a lot of you guys might already be familiar with this. If that is the case, great. You will have no problem with these next few days worth of assignments.